Howdy, my name is Joel and we're going to be doing some more maintenance updates on my 1987 Volvo 740 Turbo. Just a brief summary, I have had the car for about 8 months now. It is running and driving. I've done a lot of work to basically try to complete a stage 0, getting all the maintenance and items up to speed, and also obviously I've done some work to replace the wheels with an aftermarket set that I had powder coated, and that's pretty much a brief update. Let's go ahead and dive into the stuff that we've got going on the car today. Release.
Holding.
Release. So one of the other maintenance items we did is drain the coolant out. So on these cars it's pretty easy. You just take off the cap from the overflow reservoir, and then you take off the lower radiator hose, and when you drain it into a giant pan, if it hasn't been changed in a while, it looks like this. Ew. My favorite bonus while you're in there item is to take off the reservoir and clean it in a sink so it gets all nice and clean and good, and then when you put it back in, it looks all nice and shiny. All right, and next we are doing the manual transmission oil. I just took off the fill plug, and a little bit is running out of the fill hole, which is a good sign. It might be running out because, you know, my car might be on a slight decline or incline. But strangely enough, this transmission takes ATF type F. So my recommendation whenever you do something like this or a differential, always make sure you can get your fill plug loose first. Don't put yourself in that scenario where you got the drain plug loose but you can't get the fill plug loose, because that's bad news. So our fill plug is off, and next we're going to drain it, and then I will show you the actual transmission screen filter thing that's in the back of the transmission. Okay, so this is the back of this M46 transmission, and it is right near the transmission mount. I guess this is like a transmission crossmember. It looks at first like you might not be able to reach it, but you can. Basically, it's 6 bolts. They are 11 millimeters, and I'm able to get the back 3 off with a wrench, just being careful and taking my time. I'm sorry, technically the front 3 are more hidden towards the front of the car. The back 3 are easier to get to, and you could very easily use like a socket and extension. So basically, I'm not going to film it, but this will come off when you remove those, and there's a little gasket behind it, and then there is a screen, and you basically are going to clean out that screen and then clean off your surface and put a new gasket on. So let's do that now. So here are the parts that I took off the car. You've got the plate itself that goes on the bottom of the transmission, and then you have the gasket, which I'm pleased came off in one piece. That makes me think this was done at least not too long ago anyways. And there's your 6 bolts. So I will go ahead and clean this off, and then go clean off the place where I removed it from, and bolt everything back up, and then we'll get some fluid into this transmission. Ooh, vintage sway bar. Nice. Now, one of the things that I've been dealing with for pretty much the entire time I've owned the car is what I call a crashy idle. Basically, when I let the push in the clutch or the revs drop, the idle goes down below where it should be, drops to about maybe 400 or 500 RPM, and then it comes back up to about 750, 800 where it should be. So I'm not really sure what's been causing that, but I've been trying all kinds of things to replace vacuum lines and check for vacuum leaks. I even went ahead and checked out the compressor bypass valve on the turbocharger. I've taken off the idle air control valve. You can see that right there. It's cleaner than it was outside and inside because I removed it. And it seems like the issue is a little better, but it's still not fixed. So let me go ahead and just kind of show you what that looks like as far as the actual Crashy Idle itself. And then here was my vacuum test on the compressor bypass valve. Here is the inside of our bypass valve. You can see the little piston right there is at rest. You can't really see in there very well, but there is basically the little rubber diaphragm connected to a Mighty Vac vacuum pump. So let's give this a shot. Holding vacuum. And this is my next attempted repair. I just went ahead and bought a used idle air control valve for this car. Now this is an older red block. This is LH 2.2, so this is going to be a different shape than the ones you would normally find on the newer cars. The T shape is strictly going to be for those LH 2.2 cars, to my knowledge. So I got this from a reputable forum member, and I'm going to go ahead. I've already cleaned it, let it dry for about 2 days. Let's go ahead and put that bad boy on and see if it fixes our issue. All right, so the primary symptom that we've been dealing with for many months looks like it's gone. So let me rev it up. That's not terrible. I'm pleased to see that it's not crashing anymore. Let me rev it a little higher. That is pretty good. It seems a little bit slow to return to idle for my liking, but it sure beats the idle that I had before. So I'm gonna call this close to success. I'm gonna just basically start putting some miles on the car, and we are gonna see if that is in fact fixed and see how it runs now that we've made that change. And just some updates on some other things I've been working on with the car. You can tell I've got some things apart. I basically had a blower motor fail on the HVAC system. And so what I decided to do was try changing out a couple of relays. I had some spares and that didn't make a difference. You can see there's one here and there's one here. And ultimately I ended up buying another blower motor, which goes in right there. And it's a little hard to see, but ultimately there are screws around the rim here. So there and there and there. There's like 5 of them, I think. One of them is the ground. You can see the higher of those 2 wires. And then the purple wire is actually the power supply, and that snaps right in place. So this isn't too difficult to access, except for like one of the screws is kind of a pain, and you need like a flexible head, something or other tool to make it work. You do have to take out the ECU. So I have since removed the ECU and the cage, took out the blower motor, then replaced it, and then put the ECU and the cage back in place. So you do, in my case, what I did was I went ahead and hooked the blower up to a direct 12-volt power supply to confirm that it was in fact no good. And then I did the same test for the new one and confirmed, of course, that it is good. And the other thing I found when I was researching this issue is the famous number 16 fuse. Now, those of you who are into old Volvos might already know about it, and it's a little bit hard to tell, but there's a little bit of melting of the plastic going on for the number 16 fuse. It allegedly tends to overheat. Some people will actually remove the wires underneath number 16 and they'll remotely mount the fuse so it doesn't cause those issues. But in my case, I just removed the old fuse with some effort, cleaned out the debris and cleaned out the connections a little bit, and put a new fuse in, and everything seems to be working. So if you still got the factory setup, something to keep an eye on. But I feel better now knowing that I've got a new blower motor and a new fuse. And one other thing that I did find after running this car for a few minutes, working on that whole idle issue, was I may have found the source of my exhaust leak. So I took this photo after the car had been running because I was looking under it and noticed a small puddle of water. So that puddle of water is going to be dripping from the exhaust, And as a result, I now know where my exhaust leak lives, and because it's about halfway back, I feel super motivated to just go ahead and get a brand new exhaust. So I do have plans for a turbocharger upgrade for this car in the future, and as a result, pretty much everything from the turbo back I think should be new. You know, ultimately you have to decide what kind of setup you want when you're swapping the turbo on these cars, because this flange right here is going to be possibly the same if you get a larger turbo and use the same type of mounting, the conical flange. But I'm thinking of using a turbo with the what they call the straight flange or the flat flange, and if I do that, I'm going to need an exhaust to go with it. I could get something custom. There are some off-the-shelf options, but you know, that's something for me to figure out later. The good news is I think I've pinned it down, and that might be why the car is a little bit louder than it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting the glove box back in place. I failed to mention it earlier, but I used the opportunity of removing the glove box to go ahead and try and fix the sagging lower glove box panel and the glove box itself. So I put on some forbidden mustard, aka weather stripping adhesive, and that's now cured over several days now and is more than ready to go back on the car. So let's go ahead and put that back in place. Oh, that looks so much better. So before I did this work, this was coming apart from its base, and this was sagging completely, and now it looks good. Might have to do a little work to tighten up our glove box, but other than that, I'd say it looks pretty good. Great, let's move on. Well, that's all we've got for now. This video was a culmination of a few weeks worth of work, all kind of mashed up into one video. So just wanted to thank everybody for watching, and hopefully we'll be bringing you some more Volvo content soon.